Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to join the 10th South-South Forum on Sustainability. Apart from the Zoom webinar, we are also live streaming in Putonghua for a Chinese audience. For friends on Zoom, please click the group icon and select your preferred language. I thank today's interpreters, Huang Xiaomei and Dong Hanyu for interpreting English and Chinese, and Ji Yunrong and Guo Yongmei for interpreting Chinese and Korean. Hu Dongzhu, Liu Jiajun for interpreting Chinese and Japanese. My name is Teacher Jadi Margaret. I am Associate Professor at the Institute for Rural Revitalization Strategy at Southwest University, China. I am also a founding member for Global University for Sustainability. I have been involved in the rural reconstruction movement since 2000 year. Working together with Professor Lau Qinqi, I am coordinating the programs of the South-South Forums. We started the first South-South Forum on sustainability in 2011. We are mainly concerned about alternatives to financial and ecological crisis, and also experience of community regeneration in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. For this 10th South-South Forum on Sustainability, the central theme is Thinking New Horizons. We aim to go beyond habitual frames of thought and action in order to foster new approaches and form a strong alliance of hope of the South. Today, we have the webinar on feminist vision of junior security and a culture of life. May I introduce the co-moderator, Margot Okazawa-Ray, Professor Emerita of Social Work at San Francisco State University, is an activist, educator, and transnational feminist working on issues of militarism for nearly 30 years. She is a founder member of International Women's Networks Against Militarism and president of board of the Association for Women's Rights in Development. Now I pass the floor to Margot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all of our organizers for having us be on this panel. We're very delighted to present what we believe is our alternative to new ways of thinking about, for example, security. So the title of our seminar is A Feminist Vision of Genuine Security and a Culture of Life. So I will just share the just a short PowerPoint for the introduction, and then let's go. Okay, so I begin by inviting each of you to please present, type in the chat your name, where you are, your location, and just simply what conditions make you, your people, and your community feel genuinely secure? So you can just type this in the chat. Are you able to see my presentation? It's short, okay. So we are the International Women's Network, and our main idea is to work across the ocean in solidarity. And across the ocean means between the US and our sister member groups in Asia and Pacific. And I'll say we'll do the introductions in just a minute. And this panel today really grew out of our meeting that we had in the Philippines at the end of May. Can everybody see the screen? So basically, this is our vision, a feminist vision of genuine security and a culture of life. These are the main principles: safeguarding the environment, respect for human dignity, respect for people's sovereignty, preventing avoidable harm, meeting basic human needs, and it goes in a circle. All the elements have to be present and they interact with each other. And we live in a dominant culture of killing, and so our network and all of our members really are pushing toward what we think about as the culture of life. So Takazatsu-san, please go ahead with your part, just a brief history.
Right now, please let me introduce you the history. When the very beginning Conference of Women was held in Beijing in last century, at that time, we had many experience in protecting women and how to protect women from the violations. The US military's violation against a 12-year-old woman is very cruel. So we cannot agree on this action. We have to stop it. From then on, we began our campaign in going against the violations made by the US military. And from then on, we have been strongly fighting against the existence and the presence of US military. We have already had a lot of voices experience on this. Our voices have been supported by the feminists in the US. Some people say, or for example, for the military calling in the poor group of the US, they also fight against the military action in Philippines, in Korea. Many feminists have supported our campaign strongly and actively. Previously, in Okinawa, we also held a conference against the US military's violation against the human rights and women's rights. All of these campaigns have shown us the structural problems in social policy and politics. And we also established a campaign against militarism. And in 1998, in London, we also held a conference to protect women's rights. And we also held a conference in 2000 and later on, we held the fourth conference in Korea. The USIFIK in 2015, we held our fifth conference in Philippines to fight against and to oppose the US military in their military bases here. In 2006, after the decision made by US and Japan, we held our conference in Okinawa. About 8,000 US military troops were relocated to Guam, but the relocated military base was still in process back then. And in 2017, the 8th conference was held in 2012. To pursue the true protection of security, the US shooting base was canceled out. And after that, the pollution, atmosphere pollution, contamination all emerged. And the nice in 2017, the conference was held in Okinawa. Many more people were opposing the relocation of military base to Hyoko. And this network fight against the US violation against the women in those military bases. We aimed to protect the poor children and the women in those areas. And from then on, we began to review our purpose and target in those camp towns. A lot of violations against human rights and sexual abuse were massive. So the true security was very hard to make. So our purpose was to protect human rights genuinely. And our network isn't just a network within the area of Okinawa. Our network is a true campaign that is involved by people of all walks of life. That is our main purpose. So that is my introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Takazato-san. Then I'll introduce the next presenters in the order they joined the network. So the next presenter introduction will just be the name, the organization, and one demand that they identified from our meeting in May. So next, Alma, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I'm Alma Bulawan. I am a survivor of trafficking and prostitution, and I have 3 children. The one is from American serviceman. I used to work in the bars, and through organizing activities, become one of the founder of Buklod, which began as a drop-in center for the women who were prostituted and their American children in 1986. Buklod Center now is Buklod Women Empowerment, eventually transferred for non-government organization to People's Organization. I am currently president of Buklod Women Empowerment, chairperson of a multi-sectoral organization named Philippines Against Child Trafficking Olongapo. PAC Olongapo helped to address the online sexual abuse, exploitation of children, and gender-based violence through capability building of service providers, schools, and communities. I am also the member of Coalition Against Child Trafficking as a board member of Coalition Against Trafficking and Women, and I am representative from the Philippines for Buklod, which is a member of International Women's Network Against Militarism. To facilitate in our city, I ran as a progressive candidate councilor during the local election in 2004. I started recognize of Buklod in the city when I was running on 2004. Buklod helped to organize the National Conference on Women Survivor and Victim of Prostitution and Trafficking, which is organized by Survivor Group. Through Buklod work and accomplishment, I received the honorary degree of Doctors of Humanities in Social Work by the Chupani University in 2020. Ay natatanging kababaihan Outstanding Women Award from Olongapo City, Welfare and Development 2018, Yayuri Award, Women's Human Rights Award given 2012, Onsang Women Heroes Award from Soroptomis International Philippines on Foundation in 2009, awarding or recognizing the unique contribution to 100 years of feminists in the Philippines by Kilos Cabaro in 2005. recognition of working with non-government organization victim of prostitution and trafficking in the Philippines given by United Nations, New York City, and May 2005. Buklod is a major host and organizing the 2023 International Women's Network Against Militarism meeting and related activities last 24-29 on 23 at Subic Free Port at UP University Hotel in Quezon City. And Buklod also is I was a member of Philippine Women's Network Against Peace and Security in the Philippines.
Thank you, Alma. Thank you very much. Alma is also one of the original members. So now we'll move to An Kim Jong-ae from Korea. Please, introduction. Welcome to our panel. Yes. And he will speak in Korean.
So today I would like to explain two issues. First, the women at the camp towns, they filed a lawsuit against the state of the South Korea government because this year it's the 70th anniversary of the Korean War. Till today, we are still against the war, and we are peace loving. We love the peace. So we want to explain two issues, and later on, at the presentation, I will go into more details. Now it's just a brief introduction.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Nick Flores from Guahan. And she will be speaking in English.
Magov Pukwangi, good evening from Guahan. It's actually 10:30 in the evening here at home. And I'm from the island of Guam or Guahan, which is in the Marianas Archipelago or Lagos Zengani. And I'm a member of Pertehi Litekzen Save Retidian and also Independent Guahan. And these groups are really focused on the protection of sacred sites and the decolonization or self-determination of our folks here at home. And our demand, I'm a recent member of the network. I just want to make a note that I'm a stand-in for Dr. Lisa Natividad, a longstanding member of the network. So I want to give her a special shout out, you know, and one of our leaders here in Guahan. And one of our asks is to uphold Indigenous sovereignty, promote the decolonization of non-self-governing territories, and respect the right of all peoples to self-determination. And in addition to that, we have asked in our demands for the to demilitarize, decontaminate, and decolonize the Marianas Islands archipelago, and return all ancestral lands and abolish militarism and carceral governance, and embody a culture of peace and creativity. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to stand in solidarity with everybody on the panel. Suzus Masi.
Thanks, Nick. And our last presenter is Sam Ikehara, and she's a new PhD. She just finished her degree. So please, Sam, and speaking in English.
Hi, everyone. Like Margot said, my name is Sam Ikehara. I am a member of Women's Voices, Women Speak, which is the Hawaii chapter of the International Women's Network Against Militarism. I was born and raised on the island of Oahu, the ancestral homelands of the Native Hawaiian people, or the Kanaka Maoli. And it's their ongoing struggles for sovereignty and self-determination that most deeply inform the action and activities of Women's Voices, Women Speak. And in kind of the same way that, I'm also a really recent member of the network, and in the same way that Nick named Lisa, I want to name Auntie Terry Kekpo'olani, who really brought the network to Hawaii, also Ellen Ray Cachola, and Gigi Miranda. as the founding members of the network in Hawaii. And yeah, it's really an honor to be with you all today. So our demand from Hawaii is to hold the US accountable for the ongoing water contamination crisis of water in Kapukaki, or more commonly known as Red Hill. And in addition to that, our other demand is to prohibit the renewal of all military leases in Hawaii. I will say more about that later, but the US military has been allowed to lease over 200,000 acres of Hawaiian trust lands for $1 for 65 years. And ever since they've arrived in Hawaii, they've contaminated, destroyed, harmed all life on the islands. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm Margot Okazawa-Ray, one of the US group member Women for Genuine Security, and I'm also one of the founding members from back in 1997. And another founding member, Martha Matsuoka, is on the chat, and I can't, or is in the Zoom. I'm not sure who else is. I hope Gwen Kirk is here too. We're all among the founding members. So our demand is, from the US point of view, is to completely defund the entire US military apparatus, which for us includes not only the armed forces, but the police, the border patrols, prisons, immigration detention centers, and use that money to fund social needs. Right. And we also demand that that those who are working in those institutions be trained in jobs that support genuine security. And imagine what would happen if the whole US military apparatus were to end. That would be a big shift toward genuine security. So thank you so much. You get a sense of who the group is. So again, just as a reminder, we are from the Philippines, from Okinawa, from Korea, from Guam or Guam, the US, and recently from the Mariana Islands. So thank you so much. And now we will move to the more in-depth presentation from each of the country representatives. And I encourage you to write in your own language, any language, your reactions to what you're hearing, and then any comments, observations. If you want to share your own experiences there, that would be great. We'll keep the chats. And then at the end, we'll also have a chance for some question and answering. So please, we'll start again with Takazato Suzuyo-san, speaking in Japanese.
So I have just give a very brief introduction. In 1995, in the meeting in Beijing, why the women from Okinawa regarding to the balance at the Okinawa military base, why we set up a network. Actually, in Okinawa, the area of Okinawa only occupied the whole Japanese area of just a mere 0.06%. But among all the US military bases, 74% of US military bases are in Okinawa, which is to say the US military base is not just a question of the size. The army, the US force, more than 70% of them are in Okinawa, which is to say, in our daily life, we will experience violence and rape. And military exercises, also very serious environmental contamination. There there once was a very serious accident, which is a helicopter dropped at the university campus. So in Okinawa, every day, you can experience this kind of accidents. We want to solve all the problems, and I have been in America. I have encountered some some women from US, and that's why we set up this network together. But the current situation hasn't changed much. So we hope to grow bigger, to grow stronger, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Takazatsu-san, please continue with the story of Okinawa now.
The size of I've just said that the Okinawa is only occupied 0.06% of the size of the land of the Japan, but in Okinawa, we know that in Hiroshima there was a nuclear bomb, but when that bomb was dropped, actually, at that time, the plane that transported the nuclear bomb has flew over the city, and that's because they flew over the city of Nagasaki. They ran out of the fuel. Actually, where was they going? What was they heading for? They wanted to drop the bomb at the military base of US in Okinawa. That was the original destination. They only wanted to get more fuel refueled and then go back to the original destination. The US Army just like the Russian is attacking the Ukraine, now American in Okinawa, we always said, stop talking about the Russian army, because now it's the American army that is present in our daily in our day. It's like a nightmare that is happening every day. They didn't only started many wars, such as the Vietnam War, the Korean War. In such circumstances, we want to try our best to solve all the problems that caused by the American US armies, including environmental issues. And that's why we started, that's why we wanted to take actions. And that is the, what I would like to share. Thank you.
I will share now how women in victim of military base in Olongapo City at the time when we have a basis, and what women doing up to help in its everyone women. Buklod was organized in 1987. Buklod is a survivor group who are victim of prostitution and trafficking at the time, and it is founded by 3 women, the women from Gabriela, women from church, and women from Mennonite Center Committee, and including the women and victim of prostitution. Since the withdrawal in 1992, resulting decline of the entertainment industry, Buklod has focused on empowering women and children who are victim of prostitution and trafficking, because we believe that prostitution is it's a violation of a women and children's right and human rights. Therefore, a violation is a human right. And The vision, mission, objective of Buklod. Our vision is we are dreaming of a country with hindi ko makita. Justice and freedom from exploitation, violation, and discrimination against women through economic, political, culture, and gender aspect. The mission of Buklod is organized that work to change the situation of women, particularly women victims of prostitution and trafficking. And our objective is to raise the position and condition, including women in prostitution and trafficking. What are the activities so that we can empower women who are victim of prostitution and trafficking? We have education training. We provide training and education to each member on different topics that protect their rights. Orientation including discussion on right of women victim of prostitution, trafficking, and reproductive health and right. And other one is the organizing. We went to the bars, street and house visit to know what is the situation of the women in the bars, who if they are protected or not, and also we visit in their house so that we can know the situation of the family. And also, mabagal. It's slowly, sorry. We have livelihood program so that we can support our organization. We make bags. Because of pandemic, before it's demand the face mask, so we do a face mask also. And we have also a legal assistant. We handle 3 cases of trafficking, and the one was already is already fine, and also the one is at abuse women, a rape case. And one of our program also who support our organization is the national advocacy. We network from national in school, because they are the one who help us to advocate to advocate women in prostitution, and also the other organization in Manila, especially the Philippines Network Peace and Security. Sorry. And international also, of course, the international Women's Network Against Militarism. We meet every 2 years before when we have no pandemic. So yeah, and in our current situation now, women still have their own livelihood. Some of them, they have sari-sari stores. Some of them are buy and sell, online selling. So they still continue and not going to the bars anymore. They are all survivor. Women, Buklod have 50 women who are not working anymore in the bars, and they have their own small business, not big business. So and Buklod also, we are the member, we are the member of local government unit. We are the member of local development council. We have the member of local council of protection of children. We sit as a technical working group in local coalition, local council on women and children, and we also technical working group in local government as in disaster protection. So we are very very close to the local government to lobby, because we are always lobbying the laws, the ordinance that protect women. It's like the anti-trafficking in person. We lobby to have an ordinance, and also the USAIC, the online sexual exploitation of children, have also now have ordinance. So we have a lot. We Buklod are very what's that? Are very always, you know, always going, always present to the local government. We know a lot for us, and also in the help of other NGO, CSO, like the Philippines Child Trafficking. We work together, and other LGU in the barangay to post and lobby the different kind of ordinance that can support the children and the women. But we have challenges facing. One is the low social economic status of women who are victims of trafficking and other forms of gender-based violence. Increasing number of women and children victims of trafficking and prostitution due to enhanced defense cooperation agreement by the US, because now we have 9 places in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao where they put place that the military is there. Low funding of Buklod to continue to programs, project, and activities. Non-recognizing of the support to American. We are working with American because our children is American. We have all of us and the member of Buklod are survivor, and we have also an American children. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Alma. And if anyone has questions, please put them in the chat, and we will keep moving. And if you ever have a chance to go to the Philippines and visit Buklod Center, Alma, and all the people there, you would be amazed. And later we'll give directions on how to support Buklod, and we have another campaign idea that we'll be talking about as well. So thank you, Alma.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Anjong-ae, please.
Well, I'll start my presentation right now.
예,
My
기지촌
first
무궁위안부
topic,
국가배상 청구 소송 과정과 의미라는
the
타이틀로
comfort
시작하겠습니다.
women in the U.S. military bases in Korea. And I will talk about our national damages compensation lawsuit.
예, 혹시 그 텍스트에 보면 그 그림이 나올 텐데, 저 스크립트에
Right now, as you can see on my script or
No.
on my PowerPoint, are there pictures? Can you see them? Next slide.
네,
Here is
미군-
the picture of Camp Town in Korea.
예, 그래서 미군과 한국 여성 그리고 뒤에 보면
And here
복식을 잘
Is
보시면
U.S. military troops and the Korean women.
예,
As
그
you can see,
그림에
there are the U.S. troops, U.S. soldiers, and Korean women, as you can see on this slide.
여기 한국 그 한복과 양장과 기모노를 같이 볼 수 있습니다.
As you can see
그래서-
here, the Korean women are wearing their traditional costumes, and also some women wearing Japanese traditional costumes, as you can see on this slide.
이거는 그 일본 제국주의의 그 잔영이라고 볼 수 있습니다.
So you can see it is the militarism's impact from
Yeah.
Japan because
예.
there are women wearing traditional Japanese costumes.
예. 다음 next page.
And next
introduction에서
page,
예,
next slide.
이들을 어떻게 부르는가 하는 문제여서
Back then in
처음엔
Camp Down, how do we call such a group of women?
네, 우리가 전에는 기지촌 여성 캠프타운 위민이라고 불렀는데 이제는
We call them Camp Town Comfort Women.
no. 이제 새롭게 우리가 만들어서 불러야 될 그 정확한 명칭은 미군 위안부라는 거죠. U.S. Forces in Korea.
We should redefine them as the comfort women serving for U.S. military.
예, 맞습니다. 그래서 이들의 그
Yes, that
목소리를
is the
보면
correct name for this group of people. We should listen to their voices.
네, 한국 정부, 한국 공권력이 결코 이들의 편을 들지 않았고,
The Korean government didn't notice and protect the rights and interests of those groups of women.
예, 그리고 미군 MP와 함께 합동 단속을 나와서 이들을 구금하고 불법 감금했습니다.
And the Korean military were standing together with the US FAK to govern the women living in Camp Town.
예, 이들이 대한민국의 남한에 들어온 그 미군이 1945년 9월 8일부터 들어와서 올해 78년째
So
주둔 중입니다.
the US FAK have been stationed in Korea for as long as 8 years.
그래서 이 기지촌에서 성폭행 등 많은 인권 침해를 당한 그 생존자들이
So in those areas, there are many problems of illegal sexual slavery, sexual transactions, and sexual abuse. Many of them happened during that period of time.
예, 우선 대한민국 정부를 상대로 국가배상 소송에 들어갔습니다.
So for the Korea government, those group of people filed a lawsuit against the government of South Korea.
네, 이분들 주변에 저희 미군 위안부 인권 단체 활동가들, 학자들, 변호사,
And here, as you can see on this slide, there's also lawsuit filed against the US government made by the public to protect the rights of the Camp Town comfort women. And here are the press conference.
아니 같이 함께하는 사람들을 먼저 말씀드릴게요.
First of all, please let me introduce you the organizations working together with our organization in doing this.
예, 그래서 인권단체 활동가, 학자, 변호사, 다큐 제작자, 언론인 등이 같이 했습니다.
Historically speaking, it is the first time for the South Korea to protect the women in court. And there are also many people from the public, like doctors, students, people from all walks of life were supporting this campaign, were supporting this lawsuit.
우리들의 목적은 분명했습니다. 첫째,
And our purpose was very clear first.
피해 여성의 그 미군 위안부의 문제는 국가 범죄이자 인권
We were trying to
침해이다라고. 예, 그리고 두 번째는
redefine the abuse
예,
against comfort of women as a violation against the human rights conducted by the nation of South Korea.
예. 그걸 밝히기 위해서 저희들이 했고, 그다음에 미국 정부도 이 책임에서
to
자유로울 수 없다는 것이 저희들의
review what
주장이었습니다.
has been done by the South Korea government, we filed the compensation lawsuit against the US government and the South Korea government respectively. So all of them have to pay for their fall.
예. 불법적이고 탈법적인 성매매를 기지촌에서 미국이 허용을 했을 뿐만 아니라
Additionally, the accused of sexual transaction cannot be free from legislation. The Camptown Convert to Women is a national crime.
예. 그리고 미 국무부와 육군 의무국에서 특별하게 조사관을 파견하고 기지촌 여성을 등록하도록
What's more,
하고 정기적인
in many
성경 검사를
organizations
강요했고
of the US military, they also send panels to do research on the history of US military comfort women. They search for the facts, history, and everything about the comfort women in their military bases in Korea.
페니실린 606과 같은 의약품을 공급하고 전문 지식을 제공했습니다.
And more, in the Camptown, many officials also forced the comfort women to be injected penicillin to prevent them from being transmitted of some sexual disease.
네, 그래서 뭐 유명한 그 윤금희 씨 미군에 의한 살해 사건도 있었고 저희들이 더 이상은
And we have a famous accident, a murderer of a comfort woman in the Camptown, and this incident has aroused many social unrest and social opposition back then.
예, 그래서 2010년부터 저희들이 준비를 해서
So from 2010,
예, 그래서 저희가 준비를 해서 2014년 6월 25일 날 소송을 시작을 합니다. 첫
in
번째 사진이에요.
2014, July 25th, we filed a lawsuit on this problem, and we
네, 그래서
made the first lawsuit.
예, 지금 보이는 사진은 지금 마지막 그 대법원 판결이고요. 그 이전에
So here is
저희들이
the ruling of the Supreme Court.
예,
Before
예,
that,
예. 그 다음에 시작을 한 다음에 2차 기자회견을 갔습니다. 이때는 1심 판결이 나온 직후여서 저희들이 그 내용에 대한 기자회견을 했습니다.
after the ruling issued by the first trial, we have our second press conference.
뭐 자세한 내용은 넘어가도록 하고요. 1심과 2심,
The
3심
contents in detail will be presented later.
예.
The first trial, the second trial, their rulings.
그 파이널 그러니까 그 대법원 마지막 3심 사진이 맨 마지막에 나옵니다.
The Supreme Court's third trial can be seen on this slide, on the last slide.
예, 마지막 사진에
You'll be able to see the judgment of the Supreme Court.
예.
And this photo is the third judgment that the photo from the third judgment from the Supreme Court.
네, 이게 저희가 마지막 대법원 판결이 나오고 한 기자회견인데 한번 읽어볼게요. 기지촌 미군 위안부에 대한 국가의 책임을 공식적으로 인정한 날이라는 의미를 갖습니다.
And this photo is the third, which is the last time when we got the result from the Supreme Court after the Supreme Court ruling. As you can see in the slogan, which says the Camptown Comfort Women, the responsibility from the government to the Camptown Comfort Women, which is the day right after, which is the day that is meaningful for the women. the same day when the Supreme Court have the ruling, that is like the government has to compensate for all the plaintiffs.
저희는 국가의 공식 사과와 비합중국의 공식 사과를
We need
요청합니다.
the government to officially apologize, not only from the South Korean government, but also from the American government.
네, 앞으로 미국을 상대로 국가배상 소송을 계획하고 있습니다.
We will target at the American government and filed a lawsuit against the American government.
네, 저희가 여기서 볼 수 있는 건 피해 생존 여성들의 용기가 가장 중요했었다는 거.
As you can see from the photo, at that time, the Camptown comfort women can stand up in front of the public, and this is a very brave action that they took.
예, 그리고 아까 말씀드린 주변의 활동가들, 변호사, 다큐 제작자 이런 많은 분들의 도움으로 같이 콜라보가 잘 됐다는 것에 의미를 두습니다.
Of the filing, not only from not only civil servants, not only from the academics, and also the lawyers, also the civil society, the comfort women received all the support from the society.
네. 자, 다음에 말씀 하나 간단하게 드릴 게 있는데, 올해가 저희가 정전 70주년이어서 한반도 전쟁 끝내기 캠페인을 하고 있습니다.
is the 70th anniversary of the end of the Korean War, and we on the peninsula, we don't wish for any kind of war.
예, 이걸 제가 두 번째 스크립트에 올렸는데 혹시 이게 뜰까요?
The second
script is there.
Can we please also share the second document I sent? Could you please share?
We have a armistice agreement in 1953, but after 70 years now, we don't have any peace treaty. And at the first time, 1953, it's just a military agreement, just not political. They promised to within 3 months, their higher political conference, they will resolve the Korean Peninsula problem. But it did not happen. Now we don't have any peace treaties. So today, this year, we should end the Korean Peninsula War.
Thank you so much. And we'll have a little a chance for everybody to participate in supporting ending the Korean War at the end of our seminar. We have a little project we want to engage you in. So thank you, An Kim Jong-ae. Thank you very much. And next we will go to Nake Flores from Guahan.
Hi again. Thank you so much to Sina Jong-ae and everyone who's spoken already. This is such incredible information. Thank you so much. I am trying to share my screen. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty this evening, so I hope this is okay. Can everybody see the slide okay? The slide's okay? All right, great. Oops. All right, okay, thank you. All right, so once again, my name is Nake Flores, and I'm a member of Protect the Texan Save Rutidian, and we're a direct action group and community organization dedicated to the protection of natural resources, culturally significant resources and sacred sites in Guahan, specifically those sites impacted by US military bases and live fire training. We oppose the establishment of any military firing range and stand in solidarity with groups in the Northern Mariana Islands and the larger Pacific region for the prevention of further environmental degradation and destruction on sacred lands, and we support the return of ancestral lands to Native
Yes,
peoples.
Nick, again. Slow it down,
Too fast?
please. Slow
Okay.
it down. Yeah.
So sorry.
Okay,
I'll
we
slow it down.
English speakers are not good at this one, but please slow it down,
No.
everybody.
Okay, I'll slow it down.
Okay.
So this is the picture of members of our delegation from Guahan and the Northern Mariana Islands with our sisters in the Philippines from the meeting that we just attended in May. And also participating in our meeting is our sister, Dr. Isa Areola, who's a member of our Commonwealth 670. I love their name because it's a play on words that our wealth is the protection of our land and people, not anything else. And they are a grassroots community group dedicated to education, research, and awareness about militarization in the Marianas. And so also joining us at the meeting were two activists from Guahan, Fanai Castro and Saska Kabuhat. So we decided this was very intentional, that since the Marianas Islands have been separated by colonization, that we would kind of act as, one group this time. So this is just a map that actually Fanai pulled, which kind of situates us near the Philippines and Asia. And then just to show also the connection of us and the Northern Islands is that, we are consumed by the Marianas Islands training and testing area, which is nearly, which is about 479,469 square nautical miles. And so our current situation right now in Guahan, I'm calling from our island. We're right in the midst of a recovery from a super typhoon, our first major storm in 20 years. And what we're seeing at the same time is that our island, as well as the islands north of us, are the stomping grounds of multiple military exercises, as well as this rapid ongoing military expansion. So this is where I left off. So this is a picture actually of an area that is in our tourist district. And this is a sacred area with numerous endangered species and ancestral burials. It's owned by a private developer. And they use the typhoon as an opportunity to clear this land. They've used it as an excuse to go above the permits. So not only with the military, of course, these things are connected, right? Tourism and militarization, militarism are connected. And so we've got, multinational corporations eating up land, monopolizing. We have military interference in local government with some top government officials and politicians, profiting from this military expansion. We have a heavy investment in missile defense through the NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, and military disaster relief and humanitarian aid. Sorry, those are our main points. And so I'm trying to actually get to the point of, sorry, I just got thrown off from trying to adjust the slide. So here we go. Let me go back to this part here. Okay, so on a macro level, multinational corporations from China, Taiwan, South Korea, the Philippines, Japan, and the US have stations here in the Marianas and are setting up to profit in all industries, from military construction to global telecommunications, shipping and freight services, box or franchise retail stores, and of course, the tourism industry. And this is compounded at a micro level by settler colonialism, where smaller businesses, some from the same countries, have established locally and are also profiting significantly from the military industrial complex. And some of the examples include Black Construction, who basically have their whole history. Here in Guahan, they built the bases right after the war, and now they're building the live fire training range complex and the new Marine base. So they've been here for a long time. We also have Docomo, Cortec, and a few others. And so let me go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, but sorry, before I do, I wanted to make this point here about this slide, that in 2010, the Navy established this the Mariana Islands Range Complex, or MERC. It's a 500 million square nautical miles, as we said. It's authorized live fire on and in land, air, sea, and throughout the whole region. And at one time, it was described by the Department of Defense as the largest DoD live fire training in the world, live fire training range in the world. And so okay, so right now, as I mentioned, in our region, we have several military exercises, and they include Pacific Vanguard, Pacific Griffin, Exercise Mobility Guardian, and these are just within the last couple of weeks. And now we're also seeing military transiting here for Talisman Sabre and AUKUS coming up in a couple of weeks. But also in the Northern Islands, we are seeing training for the THAAD. So right now there's a training that's going to actually happen it started earlier this month, and it's going for a few more days for the THAAD. Sorry, where are my notes? Okay, I must have. Okay, here we go. Another issue in the Northern Marianas Islands are the Tinian Divert Airfield, which is about $170 million. And right now it's in its first and second phase. It's important to note this airfield because it's being built on the northern side of the Tinian Airport, and it's going to allow the US Air Force to use Tinian as an alternative landing site for planes in the case that Andersen Air Force Base in Guam is inaccessible due to war or other calamities. And so, and it's also another way to build a base without actually calling it a base, you know, saying that they're not expanding their footprint, right? At the same time, they're doing these wellness missions in the Northern Marianas Islands. And so we're seeing this complicated thing happening where they're doing these horrible exercises in the islands, as well as, in these trainings, as well as, you know, expanding their presence, their footprint, and using things like mobile and temporary. But what we're looking at here is truly permanent militarization. They're just moving things around. So it's never-ending militarization. And so it's kind of the same situation with the missile defense system, which we're having our first town hall meeting next Monday for the missile defense system. And this is a pretty serious issue for Guam. It's about 1.5 billion for the missile defense system in the fiscal year 2024 budget. Right now, we're in what some folks are calling, some leaders and scholars are calling an information abyss. It's really hard to get enough information about the plans for the missile defense. We're about to go into scoping meetings, and Joint Region has released limited material, but the Pentagon themselves have expressed their own skepticism in the effectiveness of this system. It'll also potentially introduce modular microreactors, which are, you know, nuclear power, like nuclear generators to power all of the launchers in the system. And this will be the first time that Guam will have land-based nuclear energy. And of course, this poses a tremendous threat to our island for nuclear radiation, and especially if we are attacked, it will definitely ensure nuclear contamination there. So the sites will, we're actually looking at the military taking more land through land condemnation or eminent domain, two new sites in the south. It'll also mean the clearing of this land, which will mean the desecration of more ancestral burials. They will definitely find unexploded ordnance when they clear for this construction. And again, it'll make us more vulnerable for destruction and contamination. This is actually a Google Earth image of the Marine base. Some folks, you know, so they've renamed this base Camp Laws, and after a Chamorro veteran, a hero, and a former congressman, who really became radicalized later in life because Guam never received compensation for our war dead and our war survivors. But a lot of folks really protest that idea because it's clear that the military is trying to force a closeness to the site of violence and destruction. So some of us refuse to call it camp blocks. We've constantly referred to it as the Marine base. It's over several ancient village sites. Mogok is one of them, Saban and Fadang, Finnegodzen, and several others. And this doesn't even include the other existing bases, as well as the live fire training range complex and urban warfare training range complex. This is a protest we had earlier this year at the base renaming ceremony. This is the same image, but this is an image we had. This image below is an image we have of a protest in front of the Guam Cultural Repository, which is a building that the military constructed to house what are called the material remains of our ancestors. So not the human remains, however, the sacred evidence of their lives. And so they decided to use this building to do an outreach event. And so these are two protests we had earlier this year, and just about a week ago, about a week ago, maybe almost 2 weeks ago, we had a small group of friends from Okinawa and Japan come through, and we had an impromptu protest outside of the Marine base. And one thing we really saw there was, a lot of heavy machinery, a lot of trucks. The construction for that base did not slow down even during typhoon recovery. And in the last few weeks, it's been really difficult for a lot of our friends who are organizing typhoon recovery to rent trucks, dumpsters to move heavy debris. And it's because it's all being diverted to the base. And so so many resources are being diverted to the construction and the destruction of land. And so that leaves us, here at our last slide, and just to reiterate our asks, but also to, to mention that we have so much work to do. This network is so critical because it keeps us connected with this international community, and it helps, we just find so much strength in this solidarity. We learn so much from each other, and find more ways to find ways that our struggles are connected, but also ways to dream together, ways to dream of a better future. And so we included these in our demands, along with all the other demands. And so I just want to reiterate them again. Return all ancestral lands, uphold indigenous sovereignty, create a culture of peace and creativity, and of course, to demilitarize, decontaminate, and decolonize the Mariana Islands archipelago. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Margot.
Thank you so much, Nick, for that. Thank you for being here despite being in recovery mode after the super typhoon Mawar. So we'll continue, and Sam Ikehara, please.
So hi, everyone. Thanks again. So I will be spending this time sharing more details about our demand and the context. So first, I will talk a little bit about the ongoing water contamination crisis, and then I'll be talking about the renewal, or what is hopefully not the renewal, of the US military leases in Hawaii. And so some of you may have heard, I'll just reiterate our demand too, so in case you forgot. So the demand is to hold the US accountable for the military contamination of water in Kapukaki or Red Hill, and prohibit construction of any new facilities and renewal of leases in Hawaii. And so some of you may have heard that Hawaii has been experiencing an ongoing water contamination crisis. And it's been for decades, but it has escalated in the past few years, all stemming from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. So Red Hill is where the US Navy stores all of its fuel, and it's a facility made up not only of 20 massive tanks, and you can see here on these little black dots, those represent the tanks, but it's also a system of pipelines that use gravity to deliver the fuel to Pearl Harbor, which is just around 3 miles away. So Red Hill is this big red dot here. Pearl Harbor, or Pu'uloa, as Native Hawaiians call it, is just right here, very close. And so the tanks were built in haste during the Second World War, and workers blasted cavities into the mountain's volcanic rock, built the tanks into the holes, and it's right above Oahu's designated sole source aquifer, as you can see on this little diagram of Oahu, the blue being the primary source of drinking water for the island of Oahu. And so the Red Hill facility, it's hard to tell from these tiny black dots, right? But the tanks hold 180 million gallons of fuel, and it's only 100 feet above the drinking water. And so, yes, and it provides water for this pink portion of this map, which is the most densely populated area of the island. And so just really quickly, since 1943, when the construction was finished, the facility has reported at the very least 73 leaks, totaling at the very least 200,000 gallons. The Navy disputes this figure, but this is actually a really low and conservative estimate. And Red Hill was finished in 1943, but it was classified until 1995. So there's just a long period of time that we just don't know anything about what was happening there. But most recently, on November 2021, 14,000 gallons of water and fuel leaked, and water samples taken from the Navy's water system revealed that the water had petroleum hydrocarbons associated with diesel fuel that was 350 times above the levels that the state considers safe for drinking. And so I just wanted to quickly mention too that the Navy has its own water system that has its own shafts, its own wells that are completely separate from what most of civilians on Oahu drink. So the fuel went directly to the places on the Navy water system, which is mainly military housing, but also a lot of local businesses, a lot of local residences that were military housing, but were converted for civilian use, and local elementary schools as well. So this November 2021 leak is what set off the ongoing contamination crisis. Oops, my stuff's out of order. As you know, contaminated water flowed through their entire system, and 93,000 people were exposed to this water at the very least. And so impacted families have ever since, even before the leak was announced, and to this day have been experiencing a number of health issues. And after months of organizing by multiple community groups, so like the Sierra Club of Hawaii, Oahu Water Protectors, Ka'ohewai, amongst others, the Pentagon announced in March 2022 that it would permanently close the facility. But this is in many ways just the beginning. You know, like the local municipal shafts and wells that are close to the Navy's water system have not been used since 2021. Our Board of Water Supply is really doubtful if we will ever use those wells again. And so the crisis has impacted the whole island. It's taking a lot of resources to think towards developing new wells and shafts, which is getting in the way of, like, you know, the construction of affordable housing. So there's all these ripple effects that have happened. And almost exactly a year since the 2021 fuel leak, during routine maintenance at the facility, over 1,000 gallons of AFFF, or aqueous firefighting foam, which contains PFAS, leaked all over into the soil. They filled hundreds of barrels of contaminated soil. And so for this reason, the movement has pivoted towards educating the community around PFAS. And part of these efforts is, holding events in solidarity where we learn about, military water contamination in other places. So like in Okinawa. So this is a photo from an event that members of Women's Voices helped to organize with the Hawaii Okinawa Alliance. And it was a screening of a documentary called Michi no Miji, which details the military water contamination crisis in Okinawa. And it was a really great opportunity for our to learn, about what's happening in Okinawa, what we can do in Hawaii, have a joint discussion about, kind of what the work that the network does about, understanding our overlaps and our differences. And so while I'm talking about Red Hill, I wanted to share a little bit about how Women's Voices organizes. So just like the network more broadly, our emphasis is on relationship and community building. And so one of the primary strategies of this has been artivism, or like art and activism. And so in response to Red Hill, we held these events where we used art to negotiate our response to the crisis and painted something that represented our vision of genuine security for our bodies, land, water. And then each of the individual paintings that we did were made into one large quilt that the community helped to paint, and that is displayed at various events related to Red Hill, related to other kinds of ongoing movement work. And so something I think that Women's Voices thinks about a lot is the heaviness of the work. Especially with something like Forever Chemicals, where there's permanence, irreversibility, or those fears in us, especially as we think about future generations. So incorporating art and creativity, like other folks have said, has been one way that to help kind of process the grief in the community, but also stay hopeful. And so finally, even though we continue to organize around the water contamination crisis, I want to touch upon the second half of the demand, which is the expiration of US military leases in 2029. So on this map, you can see all of the US military land holdings in Hawaii. The islands, because the whole archipelago is shown, it's kind of hard to see on each one. But across the whole archipelago, there are 142 or maybe 143 different military sites, all totaling 221,981 acres of land, with what Kyle Kajihiro estimates is around 1,000 contamination sites, maybe more. I don't know if this means much to an audience primarily in Asia, but a football field is 1.32 acres of land. And so then all the land that the US military occupies in Hawaii is almost 170,000 football fields. I don't know, sometimes I try to wrap my head around the scale of how vast these things are, but it's hard. And so as a little background, in 1964, the state of Hawaii and the US military settled on non-extendable 65-year leases that expire in 2029. And the military paid a total of $1 per lease for the full term. And so as you can see on this table, a lot of them, the expiration year is 2029, 2030, or some 2028. But this is just one of multiple tables. And so, so here's a close-up of Oahu, and also in the right corner, Hawaii Island, which have the most and the largest amount of military sites respectively. And so the military is, of course, hoping to retain these lands for live fire training, amongst many other purposes. But the water contamination crisis has largely shifted public sentiment towards the not just the US Navy, but the military as a whole. And so the expiration of these leases, as well as the lack of public trust and confidence in the military, is an opportunity for us to seek the return of these lands. And so traveling to Subic for the network gathering was so eye-opening and educational to me, because it elucidated that, you know, the return of the land is in many ways like another beginning, right? The road to remediation and transformation of these lands back to community use, a use like community relationships, will be a long road. And so finally, I'm slowly wrapping up, thank you. Every 2 years, Hawaii is forced to serve as the site for RIMPAC, or the Rim of the Pacific exercises, which are the world's largest international maritime warfare exercises that are hosted by the US Navy and held by every even numbered year, during June and July in Honolulu. And so next year is 2024, another RIMPAC year. And you can see this list from 2022 of all the countries that participated in RIMPAC. And so every year that RIMPAC happens, clubs and bars begin really aggressively marketing towards military personnel of all countries that dock on Honolulu shores. But of course, it's, even though there's like a kind of a heightened awareness around it because of like these visual cues outside of clubs and bars, of course, it's not only during RIMPAC that the military functions as a source of violence and harm towards women. This violence is just constantly unfolding in Hawaii, even if it's not super, or, it's made to be kind of hidden in plain sight, as, we like to say about militarism. But it's also inseparable from the systems of tourism that market Hawaii and Hawaiian women as, welcoming, hospitable, available for the pleasure of others, like these very historically situated gender-based violence discourse things. Sorry, it's 3 a.m. here, so my words aren't coming to me as well as I would have hoped. So you all hopefully know what I mean. So our demand does not explicitly mention tourism in the language, but that's built into our rejection of the military leases and our refusal to continue to allow the gender-based violence that's inherent to both militarism and tourism to happen. And so just as I wrap up, during the last RIMPAC in 2022, Women's Voices, Women Speak member Kim Kompak organized a Cancel RIMPAC street theater, which took the form of a mock press conference. And it happened in Waikiki, the tourist center of Hawaii, disrupting business as usual, with our narrative of, cancel RIMPAC, don't renew the leases, genuine security. And so like the artivism I mentioned before, the political theater that Kim writes and stages and brings the community into, tries to bring humor and play into what is a lot of heaviness and grief. And it kind of links back to the ways that Women's Voices always tries to incorporate art. So I just wanted to end with, this. So as in past years, in addition to the contamination crisis, the leases, we'll be working on, working with our community partners, our allies and sisters in the network to cancel RIMPAC in 2024. A lot to do. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's 3, almost 4 o'clock in the morning, and you've been with us almost 2 hours. So thank you for the excellent photos, and we can really visualize what's happening in Hawaii and the ways you made the connections with all our country groups. Now, I'll just say one thing about, from the US perspective, what we're trying to do. The first thing is obviously being in solidarity with all our country sisters from all the places you just heard. The other, which is coming up in our future work, is really connecting the domestic policy with foreign policy. So all the money, for example, that's going into the military apparatus that I named earlier, not just the armed forces, but the prisons, etc., it adds up to over $1 trillion a day. Right. I'm sorry, $1 trillion overall, and over $2 billion in one day. So what we know in the US is that many people here are without houses, they're houseless, they live in cars on the streets, etc., including families. There are people here in the US without adequate education, healthcare, and a great deal of food insecurity. And so we're really pushing, we hope our campaign will be pushing to make the connections. And one problem in the US, of course, is that many people in the US only think about the US and don't think very much about how US military and corporations are having a terrible impact outside the US. So we are trying to make that connection. And you can imagine with over 700 bases and installations around the world on every continent, it's a huge thing that it's, yeah, I don't know a good image except just the numbers say something, but you know, over 700 installations, and they're everywhere. And there's the latest one is the new military command in Africa called AFRICOM, Africa Command. So now their commands, the whole world is divided into different US military command centers. And so we're, as was said earlier, really trying to think about how to connect with the other groups as well as, you know, maintain our International Women's Network. If everybody is back, we have just one more segment to our presentation. And that really is for each group just to speak about something that, in other words, how you bring people together, and how have you all worked together to bring people together, and how have what we've learned together in the network, are there any principles in the network that have helped you think about organizing in your location? And also, as I asked in the chat early on, we've spoken about the vision of genuine security. So if you could, in just a few words, say how you're bringing people together and talk about the fun things that you're able to do, even though the work is very, very difficult. It's tiring. We've been at it for decades. In the case of the Korean and Okinawa people, 70 years, 75 years, just within our groups. So not to mention all the colonization projects in the Philippines, Guam, Mariana Islands, etc. So let's spend a few minutes now saying before, hold on one second. Before we do that, are there any questions from the audience? let's start there, and then we'll close with what we've learned and how we think about security. Does anybody in the audience want to ask questions? Yes. Okay, Ko Yu Gyung has a question. You said the contract for the, this is a question for Sam. You said that the contract for the land lease for the U.S. military facility, who are the contractors? And what is your strategy for contracting issues in terms of responsibility and contamination, returning land to the community?
Hi, Young. Thank you for that question. So right now, or not just now, but maybe for years already. So it's 2029. It sounds kind of, well, I don't know, maybe to me it sounds a little like far away, but it's not. And the military has already been actively working on scoping. There have already been kind of town halls and whatnot, like to talk about the lease process, always on the US military's home turf, never like really shared widely. And it's so far off, it's not on a lot of people's radars necessarily. So scoping, and they're already working on environmental impact statements for various sites. And so what is our strategy? And so in the past, Hawaii Peace and Justice, which is the parent organization of Women's Voices, Women Speak, has organized around those kinds of scoping town halls and held writing workshops, provided talking points, and it's just right now, I think that the strategy is just getting people educated, or not, sorry, that sounds so condescending, but just raising more awareness around, the leases as an issue, leveraging all of the public distrust and lack of confidence in the Navy towards this issue, trying to think about how we can keep up the momentum, because across like this 6-year period, and so I think, well, at least for me, maybe other folks will probably have better answers. I wish they were here to share, like folks like Kyle and whatnot, about more specifics about the contractors and stuff. But I think just with like Women's Voices and our kind of approach to this issue has just been about trying to raise awareness and think about, how we can, elucidate to folks too that Red Hill is not just like the first time the Navy has wronged Hawaiians, or the people who live in Hawaii, part of a much longer trajectory of distrust, harm, and violence that we need to be vigilant about. So thank you for the question.
So who you said there's the contract? Who are the contractors? I think that was part of Yu Gyung's question. The contract for the land lease.
Yeah, so it goes into these different kinds of, so 60, wait, I have it on the slide. So 68% of, sorry, it's right here. Where I accidentally closed my PowerPoint. So 68% of the land that is used for the military installations is Hawaiian trust lands. They're called the ceded lands, or the seized lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And it goes through the state of Hawaii, basically, and the state of Hawaii, and on the federal level too. In terms of the leases, the payment, that's why the payment is so low for a single dollar for 65 years per lease and whatnot. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there other questions for any of our panelists? Anybody else have any questions?
I would like to comment.
Yes, please, Takazato-san.
I'm I'm speaking in Japanese.
这个the contract even in Japan, even in America, but in Japan there is such a American the US-Japan Status of Forces Agreement, which stipulated that American is not responsible for the land, I think. For the land and the water. So now the water contamination is a very serious issue, but when it comes to the survey on the land, Japan won't have the right to go into the land to do the survey, even if there is a water contamination. This is very unfair, but it is stipulated in that US-Japan Status of Force Agreement. So now in Okinawa, there is also similar problem going on in Okinawa, and such issue is also reported to UN.
訴えようと今準備してます。You understand?
And to the UN Human Rights Committee, we are also preparing for the report.
So one important point is what Takazato-san referred to as the Status of Forces Agreement. And Alma referred to it. It's not a Status of Forces Agreement anymore, but it's the agreement between the US government and the host country government, right? And you can imagine what things are negotiated and how they're negotiated depends on the influence of the host government. So we learned at one point the German government, which also hosts US bases, their Status of Forces Agreement was almost 400 pages with all the details, including contamination, responsibility, and at that time, the Visiting Forces Agreement, the VFA with Philippines, was 4 pages. So it's kind of the agreements themselves represent, the power that's wielded by the US and then the host country relative to that. In places like Guahan, because it's territory, US territory, that is a colony, there is no such agreement like SOFA, right? Nick, do you want to speak just very briefly to this point?
Oh, no, and I was going to say, it can also be applied to, well, of course, the Northern Mariana Islands, but also even Hawaii, and also as a sovereign nation, this does not apply to Hawaii as well.
Right. And one point I also want to reinforce is that in our network, we think of Hawaii, of course, it's legally a part of the US, but we consider and they consider that it's a sovereign nation, and that's why we separate them from mainland US. So that's why when we say country groups, we include Hawaii as a separate country group. Thanks for that reminder. And Take-san makes a comment here that's very important. During the wars, countries who became victims of military violence also frequently found their troops make the same inhumane crimes in other nations and are blamed for. How do you think we advocates deal with this dilemma? So this is not just a dilemma, it's a fundamental contradiction, right? On the one hand, we may be a country group may be oppressed in some way, but when they go to another country, then they play the part of the oppressors, right? And so just thinking about how should we really deal with that contradiction, what's the internal work that the various countries have to do? and the networks have to do to make sure that we don't reproduce the same things that we're trying to change? So that's an excellent question. And there's a comment from Kinchi, where all women's network against U.S. military bases against violence and environmental impacts. So one thing that we also want to make clear is that we recognize that the U.S. may be the power center of all the problems that we're talking about. At the same time, the elites of all the locations are also in maybe stronger solidarity than we are, because the elites are lining up their interests. Because remember that militarism, armed conflict, all of those are one side of a coin, and the other side is capitalism and accumulation of wealth, controlling resources that includes people, water, valuable things like vaccines, right? So it's important that we really understand the power relations are complex. And sometimes leaders in our own countries use nationalism to line up against, for example, against China, or saying Korea and China are the worst enemies, not because they're really interested in the people, but really protecting their own kind of capitalist interests. So I think that's really important to emphasize. So the question is, how much public support do you have for your arduous task? And what are the difficulties in getting support from the public? And I think each group can speak about it. So let's start with that question. You know, big job that everybody is doing. How are people in your locations reacting to your campaign? And has it changed over time? And maybe each person can speak for about 2 or 3 minutes, then because otherwise we'll be out of time as well. And I'll just call on people. Takasato-san, go ahead, please. What kind of public support do you have these days?
In Okinawa, our campaign against the US military bases has a solidarity base and a support from whole people in Okinawa. And even though in the selection in the polls, over 70% of our population are against the military actions conducted in Okinawa. But if we put this thing in Tokyo, the scenario may be different. Because in Tokyo, many people are against our campaign. For example, in 2013, in January that year, in Okinawa, our representative made a parade in Tokyo in a very famous street and crowded street in Tokyo. And many people along that street were saying that you shouldn't say that. If you go against the military bases in Okinawa, then you are a spy sent by China, because they strongly oppose our campaign in Tokyo. But things were very different in Okinawa.
Thank you very much.
Those people in Tokyo stand against us. So I think it is a problem for us. In Okinawa,
thank you. Let's
we have support, but in Japan as a whole, we still have some discrimination problems.
Thank you very much. That's a very important point. Jung-Ae, what is the biggest obstacle in organizing on this campaign, both the 70 ending the Korean War and the Kijichan women, comfort women issue? What's the biggest obstacle?
First of all, I think there are many political problems and the sovereignty problems. Our current president has no brain, and this person thinks about nothing, and he's not that knowledgeable. I think it is bad circumstances for our country. And our president goes very closely with his US counterpart, and he is very close to the US side. So I think the 70th anniversary is quite memorable, and it is of great significance. It is a long history. So our Korean public unanimously do not need some treaties. All we need is a permanent peace.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Nick? The biggest problem, biggest obstacle?
Yeah, there are many big obstacles, like you said, Margot.
Just one.
Okay, the elites definitely are complicit here. We have, you know, as mentioned earlier, some members in the government and several business leaders, the Chamber of Commerce, that are really pushing the military expansion here. Make the post-typhoon makes it really hard. People are exhausted. There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of rage, because here we are watching this destruction of our land every day, and then we're also you know, in a hot spot for climate catastrophe. We are going to have several strong storms this year, and yes, there's changing weather patterns, but these storms become more destructive because of the climate crisis. And so that makes it hard to critique the military right now. It makes it hard. I mean, we have people in the military, for instance, there's the Rise Up group that's going and helping people rebuild their roofs, and their members include the Red Horse Special Ops group. Why is the Red Horse Special Ops group going out into the community and helping people build roofs? So there's all these ways that typhoon recovery is being co-opted, it's being infiltrated, it's being you know, the military is being opportunistic, and so it's going to complicate. It's really going to complicate. It's complicating right now. A lot of the work we're doing, for instance, that desecration we saw in Tumon, some of us were talking about a ceremony, but right now we can't have a ceremony because of the situation here. Anyway, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see, Sam?
Oh, just really quickly, I think, well, the first thing that came to mind was just sustaining people's attention across a really long, what will be a really long struggle with the leases, but also just like developing alternative economies too, as some, like, just so that, you know, when we come up against, or not necessarily against, but come up with people who are like, you know, like, we need tourism, we need militarism. Those are like, that is the economy. We need to have, even with Red Hill, when I was in like the peak of organizing around that, almost all of my, not almost all, but like a good chunk of my friends from high school, they all work at Pearl Harbor. They all had to give up, you know, wanting to be a music teacher or do various other things and work at Pearl Harbor, because that's just like where the jobs are. And they were sympathetic, but they felt conflicted. And I'm sure this is like a very common kind of feeling, and like dynamic people come up against, like, you know, in Okinawa, in Guahan, in Korea, like, you know, where the bases are, you know. And so, you know, developing alternative economies, you know, different ways for people to get what they need, you know, the vision of genuine security. I feel like that, because yeah, every time we do, like with our neighbors and friends, you know, divesting from tourism, divesting from militarism, and, you know, colonial systems of dependency, we need to also be able to point to, you know, other ways that we can sustain ourselves and be, so that's, you know, I think it goes back to, you know, not just like the tearing down, but all the work we need to do to build, to, so that's what came to mind. Thank you.
Mhm. And what, you know, Sam and others, you know, the crux of the problem also is so much of, at least part of it is very real. Another part is more ideology and rhetoric, but the economy in all these locations is very much tied to military, the presence of military bases, right? And that's the current situation. So the work is really to imagine livelihoods and ensuring people's well-being without the bases. Imagine what you could produce on the land without the bases in every location, and without the ideological domination that says, yes, we have to prepare for war against China or against North Korea. And Guahan, Philippines, Okinawa, Hawaii are all in the hotspot, right? If something happens against North Korea and China, for example, you would be really in, so much of the war would actually be affecting you directly. And so that's another important point. So yes, what's the imagination we need and the actual work of base conversion and so forth, because in the Philippines, we saw there was, the bases were kicked out. And maybe Cora and Alma can speak a little bit about that. The bases were kicked out, but the alternatives were not as good as what they were promised, right? So maybe Cora and Alma, you can speak just very quickly to that point because our time is running shorter.
Okay. For my view, it's hard. The government is not preparing when the base was pulled out. It's not preparing for alternative because they didn't believe that the US military will be pulled out. So we had no alternative to the women, even the children, and the people. But when especially in Olongapo, when they go out, the people we still, you know, is still working hard, and also like what we are doing. That's why Buklod was organized, the women, to continue, not in working in the bar or other bars, but to continue their life and change their life, empower them. That's why until now, even the base, we know that one of our problem, when the base was left in 1992, they're coming the visiting forces agreement, but we still continue organizing. We still continue talking to the women to help them and empower them that we don't need the military base here in the Philippines. Until now, we still educating them about we didn't force them, because there are some people that they like that the base was in the Philippines, but we still continue our forces to, you know, to educate and to network the government. We know government like to the American stay, but we still, you know, educating them about
and never giving up.
Yeah, protection. We just say the protection of the children and women, you know.
Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, if I remember correctly, WedPro, the feminist organization in the Philippines, had a plan for how to develop the area after the bases were kicked out. Cora, could you just say a little bit about that, and then we'll ask or bring
you.
our session to a close.
Okay, thank you, Margot. I think Alma is right. There has been some, research that was done before the bases had to pull out from the Philippines. But at that time, we know that the government is not actually serious. It's like upping the ante. You get a better price for the agreement to be renewed, because in 1991 the Philippine Senate had to make a decision, and because that is the context within which the alternatives have been developed. When the bases pulled out from the Philippines was not ready. And that is one lesson in terms of especially the toxic contamination, because the bases in the Philippines was a restricted area. Even if the Philippine flag flies in that facility, it is completely under the control of the United States. And there are two things that, of course, we tell our friends when we get to talk with them, talking about alternatives to the bases. We say that it's not easy. There is definitely some economic dislocation which happened in the Philippines, but that is a difficult phase within which you go into another stage. We technically don't have a base before the expanded agreement happened, but in fact, now the difficulty is that the United States can hold their activities anywhere in the Philippines, as long as the two governments agree. And for me, that practically makes the Philippines an entire US basis, a foreign military basis. But
Thank
as you
you,
said,
Cora.
there's no giving up. We have to continue. And of course, international solidarity is one very important component that we need to develop and continue on.
Okay, so thank you. Yay. So the last question for us, really, for each of you, is maybe you can say one thing that's that you've learned from working together as a network, that has helped your organizing, and just the short comment about that. And yeah, so why are you continue to be in the network for almost 30 years now? We're all volunteers as part of the network. How does being in the network support your work? And these are kind of principles that we can take to other spaces, perhaps.
So with all the support, with all the endeavor in front of the issues caused by the American military base in Okinawa, lots of the issues as survivors, as victims, we all stand together with other people. We try to find a way together, such as from Philippines. In Philippines, we know there are also lots of victims being raped, being murdered, and all those criminals, they once were in Okinawa as well as in the military base. So the U.S. force in Okinawa and the U.S. force in Philippines, they have this kind of united joint military exercise also caused lots of problems. All the problems in such as in environmental contamination, they're all linked together. As also such as the violence caused by the military U.S. force in the military base, such as rape or the sexual violence. The military exercise of the U.S. force in different places, and also the criminal in all the American military bases across the world. They are all linked together, and this is one of the motivation for our actions.
Thank you very much. Next.
I first yes, it's one is solidarity, and also very why Buklod is continue because of support of the member of international AWAM. So we continue, and we know that the purpose of this network is to help, to support the women in the world. That's why still very we want to continue, and in the future also. Still. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things I've really admired in just watching the network over the years, and as being one of the newer members, is truly this sense of family. It seems that you're all so close, and you've actually worked on several other projects even outside of the network together. So it's been really inspirational to watch how the network brings people together, but then other work kind of spills out from that community, other ways of collaborating and connecting and supporting each other. And that's something that we're really excited about, to continue to support, our friends from here. How can we do that? And something, that it's also been helpful, at least it's for me, it's reflected ways that we also need to network locally with the Japanese communities here, the Okinawan communities here, the Korean communities here, the Hawaiian communities here, so that we can even make those connections of our struggles with the communities that also call Guam home, so that we can support each other's struggles here and there. So it's really been grateful. I've been so grateful. Sorry, I'm getting a little sleepy as my bedtime, but I've been so grateful to witness these friendships and I've been so inspired by this work, and it's doing this work is very difficult in Guahan, and you are all light years ahead of us in a lot of ways, in terms of the numbers, in terms of organizing. So there's a lot we learn when we come to these meetings, these webinars, these gatherings. So Sainamasi again, and thank you so much. Thank you all so much.
Sam.
I feel like similar to me, like just as a witnessing like the long, rich history of the network. Like when we were in Olongapo, watching that slideshow. I know I've mentioned this to some of you before, but watching that slideshow and seeing photos of like Alma, Margot, Suzuyo-san in like 1990, like 996 or something. And then seeing you all now still partying and having fun and, doing the work. Everyone looks great. The skin looks great. I feel like you all had more energy than a lot of the young people did on that first night. And I was just like blown away, like, wow, our elders are holding it down, having fun, have so much energy and passion still, to sustain, like you said, decades long work. And it's so inspiring. I'm part of some other groups where the organizing is a lot more task oriented. It's like, there's this meeting, there's like testimony to write, got to show up here, got to paint signs and stuff. But when I'm with Women's Voices and when I was with the network, it felt, like much more like relationship oriented than task oriented. The relationships will carry you through the work but still getting a lot done, and I think that's reflected too in the ways that like music is a big part of the network, quilting, this like creativity, and like how do we keep people like engaged in the movement? We gotta have fun. There's gotta be food, there's gotta be laughter and stuff. And I feel like that's something that the network has always done really well, and that I'm trying to bring into other spaces that I'm a part of too. So thank you all for modeling that. Yeah.
The military base issue can be applied to, I mean, this issue exists in many different places. Now we are reaching out in the internet of different organizations and also different activities, and the issue, we know that in Korea we are still in this kind of armistice situation. What we want is a peace, is the final peace. And although we know the militarism is still very relevant and still haven't really achieved the permanent peace in the peninsula. So if we can accumulate enough strength and also and finally achieve the final the final peace, the permanent peace, and ending this armistice at the year, which is the 70th anniversary of the ending of the Korean War, that would mean a lot. So I'm also I would like to continue this litigation against the American government and the sexual violence of the military of the U.S. force in Korea. Such issue is not unique in Korea. It's in many different countries. So we have the similar crimes. We have the similar violence from the military base in of America.
So I think
Mhm.
it is a global issue, not
Yes.
only in Korea,
Yes.
which needs our network to give some suggestions to the UN. And we also should make some requirements for the UN. So I think our plan should be submitted to the UN Human Rights Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the way we wanted to end our conversation today is to support the 70 Years is Enough campaign, the Korean appeal. And so we have a little plan, and we hope all of you can join. We brought these signs, and we want everybody to show your sign, and we can take a photo. Okay, so that from this, if the organizers, if you can take a screenshot, and also if you don't have one of these posters, then please give your message in the chat and we will send it to the campaign. So, and here's, thank you, Martha, for including all the different links for what you can do in Korean, Japanese, and English. So there you can see how to participate in this. So this is the main screen coming up. Oops, this one. So for us, we think about our work as trans-local organizing. So everybody organizing locally, and then we transcend and connect at the international level. So art and creativity, language interpretation, which is, as I said before, central to all of our work, South-South Forum, as well as the network. We center relationships. Some of us have been together as a network since 1997, and some of the relationships were long before that. So it's been a long time. And the other important thing is that our analysis is always grounded in the situations, from people's experiences, like the comfort women experiences, the stories that were used as testimony, what's happening when so-called base conversion happens, understanding what that actually means in practice, what it means to fight the dominant national power, even when the local people say they want no more bases in Okinawa or no new bases. The central government, the Japanese government, Tokyo government says we're going to do it, right? So really understanding the power relations, thinking about what Nate shared with us, the relationship between the military presence, the natural disaster that is in some ways unnatural because of the frequency and the strength of the super typhoon that happened, right, is really exacerbated, made worse by climate change, military presence, and all of that. And in Korea, of course, the absence of a full peace treaty and ending the Korean War. So all these situations have helped us do the analysis from the people's experiences up, not academic theories. And then we can make a theory, we can make an explanation of what's happening in our specific locations, then putting those all together. And so going back to the last image I'd like to end with is, based on all the ways that we've analyzed our situations over these decades and our vision, right? In summary, this is the elements of what we think about as our feminist vision of genuine security and a culture of life: meeting the basic human needs, safeguarding the environment to sustain life, respect for human dignity, respect for people's sovereignty, and preventing avoidable harm. So that's it for our network.
Thank you very much. And we support the all your projects involved in the long struggle for the demilitarization. And on the other hand, we also have a very rich discussion about the dollarization. I think these two projects should be joined together. That means demilitarization and also the dollarization. So let's two groups of our speakers can work together, and let the victims of militarization and dollarization be visible and work together for a better world. Thank you very much.